Am Latha Shema Lagashoth, Athal Ghabaray Hathor Hazath, Hachathobain Basapar Hazah, Layara Ath Hasham Hanachbad, Wahanara Hazah Ath Yao Alecha, Wahapala Yao Ath Machathacha. The Tetragrammaton. What is the correct pronunciation of God's proper name? As with the name Masha, some of you are probably wondering, who is this Yahutzachak, and who is this Yahughakab, and who is this Yahusharal that I keep talking about? These are Theophoric names. A Theophoric name is simply a personal name which has God's proper name as part of it. Whenever a Theophoric name was pronounced, you also heard God's proper name being uttered every single time. The name Abram gave his son, commonly known as Isaac, was because Abram and his wife laughed at the idea that God could make her pregnant at the advanced age of 90. This is found in Genesis 17, verse 17. The part of the name that means laugh is the word Tzachak, spelled with the three letters Tza, Cha, and Ka. The initial letter Yah that prefixes the name is the first letter of God's proper name. It is not the word he, as many ignorantly claim. The name literally means Yahweh laughs, because at the end of the day, it was God who did the laughing when Abram's wife conceived and gave birth to a son, just as he said she would. There is nothing too hard for God to do. Yahutzachak in turn gave his son the name Yahughakab. Again, this name is made up of two words. The initial letter Yah is the first letter of God's proper name. The second word is the word Gakab, which means to supplant or to overtake and overpower. In Genesis 25, we read that Yahughakab came out of the womb grasping the heel of his older fraternal twin brother, Gasho, who was commonly called Esau. This was the first sign of the prophecy given to the boy's parents in Genesis 25, verses 21 through 23, that the younger child would become a nation that would eventually become the master of the older son and his nation. The younger son's name means Yahweh supplants, because it is God who brings down Gasho and advances his younger brother ahead of him. Yahughakab was eventually given a new name. In Genesis 32, we read that he was assaulted by an angel of God, and that he successfully overpowered that angel until the angel hit him in his thigh bone, which threw it out of joint. But that was not enough to force Yahughakab to let the angel go, and Yahughakab refused to let him go until he blessed him. So that is what the angel did. He gave him a new name made up of three words, which literally means Prince with the God Yahweh. The initial letter Yah is the first letter of God's name. The second word Shar means prince or ruler, and the final word Al means God. These names were too difficult to pronounce by people who only spoke Greek, and in many cases they are impossible to spell in Greek. But because they also have God's proper name in them, the converts who made the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible called the LXX in Egypt around 200 BCE Hellenized these names to prevent God's name from being uttered. This superstition, which arose in Egypt among Hellenized Jewish converts, was later taken to the extreme by converts after the destruction of our nation by the Romans in 70 CE. The converts who were now the leaders of the Jewish community by the 2nd century CE prohibited the uttering of God's name. As for the Masoretic or rabbinic forms of these names, they lean heavily towards the Greek versions, but the Canaanite influence is also obvious. The E vowels in Yitzchak and Yisrael are pure Canaanite. These sounds are preserved by the Masoretic Hirik vowel point placed beneath the initial letter called Yod. The letter Ba is softened to V by lenition, which is alien to ancient Hebrew. This is Canaanite. There is no long O vowel in the name Yahughakab between the last two consonants, but to preserve the Canaanite dialect, the Masoretes placed the Holam vowel dot over the letter Kaf, so the O vowel is pronounced at this point. The letter Ga, which is commonly called Ayin, is an A vowel in this version of the name Yahughakab, but it is really a guttural. According to the rule, it is only a vowel marker when it is not the first letter of a Hebrew word. Turning this letter into an A vowel is also refuted by the scarab seals of Yahughakab Har. This Egyptian pharaoh had the same name as Yahughakab, and the forearm hieroglyph is used in the Egyptian spelling of his name, where the letter Ga is written in the Hebrew spelling. Egyptologists prefer to pronounce the king's name as Yaku, but this is only an educated guess. There are no vowel letters written in the Egyptian spelling, so we contend that the correct pronunciation of the unwritten vowels in the Egyptian name was Yahughakab. The letter Shah is altered to S by the Masoretic point placed above the letter on the left side. The letter is called Sin when this happens and not Shin. In these three Theophoric names, a diminutive or reduced spelling of God's name is used and not the full spelling with 4 letters. But in the Masoretic and Rabbinic tradition, it is forbidden to say God's name. Thus, all Theophoric names are deliberately mispronounced by the Masoretic vocalization system. This well-known superstition can be traced back no earlier than the 1st century CE in Egypt by the Hellenistic Jewish convert philosopher named Philo, who wrote that God's name is not to be pronounced. This is not a genuine Hebrew tradition. It is a late Hellenistic distortion of Hebraic customs, but it survives today in Rabbinic Jewish tradition. There are 4 diminutive forms of the Tetragrammaton. The Proto-Grammaton is the single letter Yah, and this is a prefix in personal names. The second diminutive form is the Deuterogrammaton letters Yah and Ha, and this is a prefix and a suffix in personal names. The third form is the Deuterogrammaton letters Yah and Wa, but this is only a prefix in personal names. The fourth diminutive form is a Trigrammaton with the letters Yah, Ha, and Wa, and this is both a prefix and a suffix in personal names. Whenever a Hebrew child was born, the parents had the option of incorporating God's proper name into their child's name by choosing one of the 4 spelling forms listed here. These are not nicknames for God pronounced 8 or more different ways. All 4 of these spelling forms are pronounced the same way, Yah-O. Now you're thinking to yourself, how is that possible, especially when the brother has been telling us that the only unwritten vowel in ancient Hebrew is the inherent A vowel. The reason is because this is no ordinary Hebrew word. This is God's proper name, and we are forbidden to alter it into a nickname like Tim for Timothy, or John for Jonathan, or Will for William. God's name is not like our names. We reduce the spelling of his name only when it is part of someone's personal name, and this is done out of respect. We never use the full spelling of God's name in our personal names. There are no such things as Yahu, Yeho, Yo, and Yah. These are not how we say God's proper name. They are only allusions imposed on ancient Hebrew by the Masoretic vowel pointing system. Now, there are many Hebrew camps who realize the Masoretic vocalizations are not genuine and not correct, so they've come up with their own ways of pronouncing these 4 diminutive forms, such as Yaha, and Yahweh, and Yahweh, and the list goes on and on. But these are all incorrect. The Most High does not have nicknames. He has titles, but not 8 million different ways to say his proper name. There is only one way to say his proper name, even when you are reducing the spelling of his name out of respect, because you are incorporating his name into a personal name for yourself or for your child. The full spelling of his name is never used in these instances. If you put the full spelling of God's proper name into your own name, you are committing blasphemy. That's why our forefathers were careful and used the diminutive spellings instead, but they did not alter the pronunciation of God's proper name. Let me repeat that. The spelling of God's proper name in personal names is always reduced to a shorter form, but its pronunciation is never altered. It must always be pronounced the way Masha was told to say it. So what about the name Yah? The word Yah occurs 49 different times in the Hebrew Bible. It is not a proper name. It is a title used exclusively by the Most High God, and it means eternal. It is not an abbreviation. It is not a nickname. If it were either of these, it would not be prefixed to God's proper name. To prove this point, let's look at the book of Yeshayahu, which everyone calls Isaiah, chapter 12, verse 2, but in the Hebrew. Hana al Ya'ashawai the aptach, wa al apachat, chegaze wa zamrath, Ya'o, wa ya'e le la Yashawai. Behold, God is my salvation. I will trust and not be afraid. For the eternal, Ya'o, is my strength and my song, and has become salvation to me. Therefore, if someone tells you that Yah is another proper name for God, or that it's just an abbreviation of his 4-lettered name, you have to tell them that's false, and then point them to Yeshayahu, who was called Isaiah, chapter 12 and verse 2, and ask them to explain what would be a redundancy if what they were saying is true. Yah is a title and not a proper name, but only the Most High can use this title, just like only one person can have the title POTUS. God has many titles, such as A'eh, which means I will be, and Adonai, which means Lord or Master, and Allah'im, which means God, but he only has one proper name, and that proper name can only be pronounced one way. Here is the proof that diminutive spellings of the Tetragrammaton are all pronounced the same way. They are not contradictory pronunciations, as the pointed Masoretic Hebrew text would have you believe. An Assyrian inscription of the 8th century BCE by the king Tiglath-Pileser III describes the tribute paid to him by the Hebrew king Ahaz and other kings of the area. We learn from this text that the real name of Ahaz was not Ahaz. He shortened his name to Ahaz by removing the Theophoric element at the beginning of his name. However, the Assyrian scribes used the king's full name when recording his submission to Tiglath-Pileser III. The Akkadian language uses the cuneiform script, which is written with an instrument called the stylus. The first sign that the Assyrian scribes used to write the name of Ahaz is the sign IA, which produces the syllable Yah. The next sign, which I have colored in red, is an O vowel, but Akkadian does not have this sound in their language, so they use the sign AU, or the U sign, for this vowel. The king's name and the name of his country, which is the second word in the cuneiform text, both begin with the name Ya'o. So what we have in this text is the phrase Ya'ohazi of Ya'odah, or to say it correctly in Hebrew, Ya'oachaz of Ya'odah. Ahaz was one of the worst, if not the worst, kings in our history. He rejected God and worshipped false gods. So it is not surprising to learn that he deleted God's name from his name. But when he became a slave of the king of Assyria, the Assyrians evidently demanded that he use his real name when paying his tribute to Tiglath-Pileser III. Notice that the letter Ha in God's name is silent. If the Assyrians had heard this letter when the name was pronounced by Hebrews, the Assyrian scribes had an H sign for this. So the fact that they did not write the H sign in the name is proof that you don't hear it. Thus, the correct pronunciation of the diminutive form Yah, Ha, and Wa is not Yeho, as mandated by Masoretic Hebrew, whenever the trigrammaton is the prefix of a personal name. We can also rule out Yahweh. The Assyrians did not hear an H sound in this name. The Assyrians also did not hear the sound W. The letter Wa in this name is not the consonant, it is the vowel marker, and the vowel that was heard was the long O vowel. Yahweh is also out the window, as with Yahweh. The Assyrians heard Ya'o when God's name was uttered by our forefathers. The royal name everyone mispronounces today as Jehu is spelled with a single letter Yah as the prefix diminutive form. The king's name is not Jehu. It is Yao-ho, Yao-ho. It combines God's proper name with the third person masculine singular pronoun ho, which means he. Hence the meaning of the king's name is Yao is he. This name is the answer to the rhetorical question, who was God? The answer is Yao is he. There is also no such thing as the name Abijah or Abijah as it is spelled in the King James and other English translations of the Bible. The king's name is spelled two different ways in ancient Hebrew. One way is with the letters Yah and Ha as the diminutive suffix form. Another way is with the letters Yah, Ha, and Wa as the diminutive suffix form. Both forms are pronounced the same way. There are not two different ways to say the king's name. The way you pronounce his name is Ab-Ya'o. Ab-Ya'o. Ya'o is father. Ab-Ya'o is not actually the name this king was given at birth. His name was Abaim, not Abijam or Abiyam. Abaim, and it means father. This name is not a theophoric name, so I didn't put it in the chart. The last two letters Yah and Ma are used to pluralize words in Hebrew or emphasize them. So the name Abaim is not fathers in the numerical plural. It is father in the singular, but emphasized with a majestic plural. The name is a reference to God, who is the supreme father. And this explains why later in life the king adopted the name Ab-Ya'o, which means Yahweh is father, and is more specific in meaning. The name of the prophet everyone mispronounces as Jeremiah is spelled two different ways in ancient Hebrew. The first way is with the letters Yah and Ha as the suffix form. The second way is with the three letters Yah, Ha, and Wa as the suffix form. Both forms are pronounced the same way. There are not two different ways to say the prophet's name. The way you say his name is Yaram Ya'o. Yaram Ya'o. And the meaning is Ya'o will lift. Another mispronounced royal name is the name of the king people call Joram and Jehoram. His name is spelled two different ways in ancient Hebrew. One way is with the letters Yah and Wa as the prefix diminutive form. A second way is with the letters Yah, Ha, and Wa as the prefix diminutive form. Both forms are pronounced the same way. Ya'oram, Ya'oram. And his name means Ya'o is exalted. The correct way to say the name of Abram's firstborn son is not Ishmael. It is Ya'o-Shmai-Al, Ya'o-Shmai-Al. And it means Ya'o is the God who hears. The name that we commonly mispronounce as Judah or Yehuda is spelled two different ways in the ancient Hebrew. The first way is with the two letters Yah and Ha as the prefix. The second way is with the three letters Yah, Ha, and Wa as the prefix. Both of these versions are pronounced the same way, Yaoda, Yaoda, and it means Yao is praised. The name we commonly mispronounce as Joseph or Yosef is also spelled two different ways in ancient Hebrew. The first way is with the three letters Yah, Ha, and Wa as the prefix. The second way is with the two letters Yah and Wa as the prefix. Again, both versions are pronounced the same way, Yaosap, Yaosap, and it means Yahweh added. There is also no such thing as the name Joahaz or Jehoahaz or Jehoahaz. This name is spelled two different ways in ancient Hebrew. One way is with the letters Yah and Wa as the prefix diminutive form. Another way is with the letters Yah, Ha, and Wa as the prefix diminutive form. Both forms are pronounced the same way, Yaoachaz, Yaoachaz, and it means Yahweh takes. There is no such thing as the name Joab. This name is spelled in Hebrew with the letters Yah and Wa as the prefix diminutive form, but the way you pronounce it is not Joab. It is Yaoab, Yaoab. Yahweh is Father. The name of our great king that everyone mispronounces today as Hezekiah is also spelled more than one way in ancient Hebrew. One way is with the letters Yah and Ha as the suffix form. Another way is with the letters Yah, Ha, and Wa as the suffix form. Both forms are pronounced the same way. There are not two or three different ways to say these forms. The way you pronounce the king's name is Chazak Ya'o, Chazak Ya'o, and it means Ya'o is strong. There is a third way to spell the king's name, and that is with the letters Yah, Ha, and Wa as the diminutive suffix form, but also his name is prefixed with the letter Yah. This letter Yah is turning the word chazak, which means strong, into a verb in the future tense. So what the king's name means in this case is Ya'o will be strong, and the way you pronounce it is Yachazak Ya'o, Yachazak Ya'o, Ya'o will be strong. The name almost everyone mispronounces today as Jesus, or Yeshua, or Yehoshua, or Joshua, or Yahawashai, and the list goes on, is also spelled two different ways in ancient Hebrew. One way is with the single letter Yah as the prefix. Another way is with the three letters Yah, Ha, and Wa as the prefix. Now the first version is not pronounced Yeshua. It is pronounced Ya'o Sho'ai, Ya'o Sho'ai, and it means Ya'o is salvation. The second version is not pronounced Yehoshua or Joshua. It is pronounced Yaoshai, Yaoshai, and it also means Yao is salvation. The root verb in both versions of the name is Yashai, and it is spelled with the three letters Yah, Shah, and Ga. The letter Ga is the long I vowel here and not the guttural consonant because it is not the first letter of the word. So we pronounce the verb as Yashai. This verb is also the first part of Isaiah's name, so we pronounce his name as Yashai Ya'o, which means Ya'o saves, because the verb Yashai means to save. Now you can change the verb into the noun salvation, and the way we do that in Hebrew is by inserting the letter Wa between the last two letters of the root verb. When we add the letter Wa, the pronunciation changes to Yah-Shoai. This is how you say the noun salvation. We need to make this point very clear. The noun salvation is not a proper name. The word Yahshua or Yeshua, as is mispronounced, cannot be a personal name unless the person is suffering from delusions of grandeur. Only the Most High God is salvation. So when you see this word and it is actually being used as a personal name, it is not pronounced Yahshua. It is pronounced Ya'o Sho'ai, and the person who is salvation is immediately identified by name. Ya'o is salvation. The initial letter Yah then becomes the proto-grammaton prefix, and we do not pronounce diminutive forms of the tetragrammaton according to their spelling. Whenever a diminutive form appears in a personal name, we pronounce God's name correctly. We do not alter it into a nickname. Another way that we turn the verb Yashai into a noun within a personal name is by dropping the initial letter Yah and adding the letters Ha and Wa. This creates the name Hoshai, which is another short nominal sentence. The name means He is salvation, and it is the answer to the rhetorical question, who is God? This name provides the answer. He is salvation. The word Ho is a third person masculine singular pronoun, which means he in English, but it is written here in the short form. The complete or long form is spelled Ha, Wa, and Ah, and the terminal letter Ah is silent because this is a masculine word. Hoshai was the original name of Masha's right-hand man and chief minister, but Masha later changed his name by adding the letter Yah at the beginning. This changed the word Ho into the trigammaton Yah, Ha, and Wa, which is a diminutive spelling of God's proper name. So now the way you pronounce Hoshai's name is not Yahawashai, not Yahushai, not Yehoshua, etc. It is Yaoshai, Yaoshai. This is another nominal sentence, but more specific and direct in its meaning. It means Ya'o is salvation. Allah Shemot Anashe Masha Shalach Masha Lato'ath Haratz Wayakar Masha Lahoshai Ban Non Yaoshai. These are the names of the men which Masha sent to spy the land. And Masha called Hoshai, the son of Nun, Yaoshai. Numbers 13 and 16. This form of the name is the most common and the most important. It occurs over 200 times in the Hebrew Bible, and it was most likely this version that was given to you-know-who at birth. The first version we looked at only occurs 29 times, and these are all found in the later books of the Hebrew Bible. But because the converts in Egypt who made the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible called the LXX around 200 BCE were believers in the superstition that God's name should not be uttered, they Hellenized both versions of this name and changed their pronunciation into Jesus in Greek, so God's name is not heard when the names are uttered in Greek. This Greek form Jesus eventually became anglicized as Jesus. I again must stress that the noun Yahshua, which is mispronounced Yeshua, is not a personal name, and it is not the name Jesus could have been given at birth, because it would have offended everyone in the community where he was raised. None of his own people would have called him by this word, because only the Most High God can be called the noun salvation. So his name was either Yahushua, which is the first version we looked at, or his name was the standard, most common version, Yahushai, both of which mean the same thing. Yao is salvation. Okay, so let's recap. The picture on the left is real Hebrew, and the one on the right is fake Hebrew. Sorry to put it in those terms, but it is an indisputable fact. The ancient script on the left did not evolve into the script on the right. The script on the right was introduced by the ancient Assyrians for writing the Aramaic language. It eclipsed our script because the Gentiles from other nations who converted to our religion were more familiar with the Assyrian square script. So these converts rewrote the biblical manuscripts in the Assyrian square script during the last 2 centuries of the Second Temple period. When the Romans destroyed our nation, the converts took the lead and carried on, and they continued to copy the Bible in the Gentile Assyrian square script. Then the Masoretic scribes added their vowel points and diacritic signs to these manuscripts in the 9th century CE. The ancient and real Hebrew script did not have vowel points or diacritic signs to help the reader with pronunciation. Instead, vowel letters were recognized by their positions within a word, and the vowel sounds of ancient Hebrew were ah, a, o, and I. God's proper name therefore has to be Yahweh, because every consonant letter in his name is also a vowel letter when it is not the first letter of a word. The letter Ha is always a silent vowel placeholder unless it is the first letter of a Hebrew word. You've seen this graphic a few times already in the video, so let me say a few words about it. Masha was not kidding when he wrote that God speaks Hebrew, and this was the language he imparted to Adam. This is the language that survived the global flood, and it survived the Tower of Babel among Ghabaray and his descendants. The language was named after Ghabaray for this reason. It has no precursor, and its script preceded the Egyptian hieroglyphs. These are fantastic claims, but they are the claims made by Masha in the Torah. You either believe them or you don't. King Chazak Yao believed them. This graphic is a picture of his royal seal. The script reads, L'chazak Yao, Achaz Malach Yehuda. Translated into English, this is belonging to Chazak Yao, son of Achaz, king of Yehuda. When this artifact was discovered, scholars were left scratching their heads because King Chazak Yao, or Hezekiah as he is called in English, used Egyptian iconography in his royal seal. The Bible praises Chazak Yao as one of our greatest kings. He was a righteous king who kept all of God's commandments. But this seems to be contradicted by his seal because it shows a winged sun disk with 6 rays shining out, and it is flanked on the left side and the right side by the Egyptian Ankh symbol for life. The winged sun disk is a well-known symbol for the Egyptian sun god. So what is going on here? The answer is simple. The ancient Hebrews believed their language and script was of divine origin and has no precursor. The Egyptian hieroglyphs came later, and the creators of these glyphs referred to the Hebrew script for at least 22 of their own hieroglyphic symbols. They simply redesigned the Hebrew letters. This is not the Egyptian sun god inside Chazak Yao's royal seal. It is not any god at all, or it would be a violation of God's commandments. Therefore, it can only be a symbol of Chazak Yao himself. God's anointed king outranks all other foreign kings. Contemporary Egyptians would have looked at this seal and concluded that Chazak Yao was a worshiper of their supreme sun god. But the truth would have offended them. Chazak Yao was actually claiming the status of their god and the right to usurp their artwork because the hieroglyphs were inspired by Hebrew. Keep in mind that symbols and geometric shapes and designs have no inherent meaning. They only mean what you want them to mean. What one symbol means in one culture can have an entirely different meaning in another culture. So although the winged sun disk was invented by Egyptians and represented the Egyptian sun god, in the Hebrew kingdom of Yehuda, it represented King Chazak Yao. The 2 Egyptian ankh signs flanking the sun disk mean, Long live King Chazak Yao. This king bowed to no man and to no god except the Most High. He only served Yao. All the kings of the earth and their false gods were beneath Chazak Yao because he was God's anointed. Now is the time for me to keep my promise about Genesis 15:7 and Genesis 28:13. Even though we cannot rely on the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible called the LXX for the pronunciation of Hebrew words and names, there is still great value in this translation because it was made from a Hebrew manuscript that predates the Masoretic text. The first century Hebrew historian Josephus was using this much older Hebrew manuscript when he wrote his Antiquities of the Jews and the Wars of the Jews, and both of these works are indispensable. When you read Genesis 15:7 according to the Masoretic text, it has God introducing himself to Abram by his proper name. This contradicts Exodus 6:2 and 3, where God clearly states to Masha that he did not utter his name to Abram, nor to Yahutzachak, nor to Yahugakhab. This problem does not exist in the LXX because the Hebrew manuscript upon which it is based did not have God's proper name as part of God's introduction to Abram. Instead, it has God introducing himself by his title. In Greek, this is Ho Theos, or the God, in English. In Hebrew, this is Ha-Ala'im. Wayamar aleo, ane ha'ala'im ashahutzathecha ma'or chashdem, lafafacha af ha'aratzazath larashatha. Hence, the Masoretic text needs to be corrected here by the older Hebrew manuscript that was used to make the LXX. God told Abram in Genesis 15:7 that he is the God, Ha-Ala'im, who brought him from Mesopotamia to inherit the land of Canaan, but he did not utter his proper name during this conversation. The Masoretic text has God introducing himself to Yahugakhab by his proper name. This contradicts Exodus 6:2 and 3, but the problem does not exist in the LXX. There we find God introducing himself by the title, Lord God, which is Kurios Ho Theos in Greek. The same expression appears in the LXX translation of Psalm 86:15, where it renders the Hebrew Adonai Al. This is another case where the Masoretic text is inferior to the Hebrew text that was used to make the LXX and needs to be corrected. Wahana, Ya'o Natsab Galeo, Wayamar, Ane Adonai Ala'e Abram, Abecha, Wa Ala'e Yahutzachak. Notice carefully that the word Lord is pronounced Adon in Tiberian Hebrew. This is the Canaanite dialect. There is no O vowel in the Hebrew word. It is pronounced Adonai in Hebrew. What the Tiberian Hebrew does is preserve the Canaanite dialect by the inclusion of a dot above the letter Dalet. That tells the reader to pronounce an O vowel where there is no O vowel. Adon and Adonai are Canaanite pronunciation. The correct pronunciation in Hebrew is Adonai. Pharaoh Amenhotep III was king of the Egyptian New Kingdom 133 years after Masha led our people out of Egypt in the Exodus. But why is this relevant to the discussion? It's relevant because Amenhotep III commissioned an inscription to be made in one of his temples in the Sudan region. And in this monument, the proper name of God is recorded in hieroglyphic text. In other words, Amenhotep III had this inscription made not that long after God told Masha how his proper name is supposed to be pronounced. And some of those second-generation Hebrews who left Egypt in the Exodus were living at this time. This means Amenhotep III's inscription is a witness to how these second-generation Exodus Hebrews were pronouncing God's proper name. Let me set the stage by quoting just a few words from James E. Hotch that I mentioned earlier in this video series. This is from page 5 of his book, Semitic Words in Egyptian Texts of the New Kingdom and Third Intermediate Period. Quote, "In the New Kingdom, Semitic and other foreign words and names are regularly written in a specialized writing system known as group writing that employs a relatively small number of sign groups in combinations that were not formerly used for native words." The image on the left is the fragment of a toponym list or topographical list of Amenhotep III. This is a list of places and peoples outside of Egypt that pharaohs claim were under their political control. In the picture you can see a woolly-haired bearded man with both arms tied behind his back just above his elbows, symbolizing a subject or a captive. Below the man's waist is a name ring with hieroglyphic text carved inside. This identifies the man and where he comes from. Except for the lower left corner, which is broken away, the name ring and its text are very well preserved. The first glyph at the top is the biliteral sign Ta, depicted as a horizontal strip of land. Accordingly, this glyph is the word for land or country. The second glyph beneath the Ta sign is the biliteral sign Sha, depicted as a pool with lotus flowers. The third glyph and the fourth glyphs form a group. The first glyph is the sedge plant, which is the biliteral sign Su. The next glyph is the quail chick. This glyph is normally the consonant W, but it is used here as a U vowel in group writing. The pronunciation of these four glyphs is therefore Ta Sha Su, Ta Sha Su, which means land of the Shasu. Now there was no such people called the Shasu. This name is not the name of a people. It simply describes the nomads living in Canaan next door to Egypt. The next word is the name of a foreign deity not worshipped in Egypt. The double re glyph is the consonant Y, and the shelter glyph is the uniliteral sign H. This group forms the syllable Ya. The next two glyphs form another group. These are the lasso glyph and the quail chick glyph. This group is the final syllable in the deity name. These glyphs are written together to indicate the presence of a diphthong, which is vocalized as a long vowel. There is only one vowel possible for this particular group, and that is a long O vowel. The lasso glyph is the glyph used by Egyptians for this sound when they wrote the foreign names Ptolemy and Cleopatra in hieroglyphic text. If the name was pronounced Ya'u, you would not need to write the lasso glyph plus the quail chick group. You would just end the name with the quail chick by itself. So the name has to be pronounced Ya'o. The Egyptian text reads in full, land of the nomads of Ya'o. This is clearly a reference to our people in Canaan, and Ya'o is what the Egyptians heard when our people uttered God's proper name. Now, for those of you who think it's not important to know God's name or to know how to say it correctly, let's turn to the book of Ya'al, chapter 2, verse 32. The prophet's name is Ya'al, not Joel, and it means Ya'o is God. Chapter 2, verse 32 reads in the Hebrew, Wahechal ashar yakar basham Ya'o yamlat, che bahar tseon, waba Yerushalayim, va'e palatecha ashar amar Ya'o, waba sharei dem ashar Ya'o kar. In English, and it shall come to pass, whoever will call upon the name Ya'o will be delivered. For in Mount Seon and in Yerushalayim will be deliverance, as Ya'o has said, and in the remnant who Ya'o calls. If knowing how to say God's name is not important, then we have a major problem, and this prophet has just lied. Because according to this prophet, calling upon the name Ya'o is what will save people. So what this text is telling us is that the day is coming when God's people, God's chosen people, will begin to call him by his correct name. In Mount Seon and in Jerusalem, which are mispronounced as Zion and Jerusalem, will be deliverance, as Yahweh said. And in the remnant who Yahweh calls, the remnant whom Yahweh calls is his people. Now you could say, no, the prophet is not lying. You're just saying his name wrong. You're supposed to say Jesus. Are you supposed to say Yahweh? Are you supposed to say Yahoo? Are you supposed to say Yahweh? Are you supposed to say Yahweh? Are you supposed to say Ahaya? Are you supposed to say Yahweh? Are you supposed to say Jehovah? Are you supposed to say Yahweh? But not according to the people who, when they heard the name Yahweh, they were terrified. The ancient Egyptians. The ancient Egyptians were tolerant of other religions. They welcomed all foreign gods, but they did not want to have anything to do with the God whose name was Yahweh. That's no accident. All gods were worshipped in Egypt but this God. That's because Masha called on that name to destroy them for refusing to let us go. The name Yahweh was feared in Egypt. And Amenhotep III and every other native Egyptian, they knew how to say this name. The people who learned from experience in the hard way that Yahweh is not a God to be messed with, those people, those same people, have basically left us a tape recording of what his name sounds like when it is pronounced. That is the witness that God has left for himself in the Egyptian record. Even the Egyptian inscriptions tell you how to say his name. Ask Amenhotep III who is Yahweh, or who is Yahweh, or who is Yahuwah, or who is Yahweh, or who is Jehovah. You have no idea who you're talking about and look at you like you have three heads. But ask him who is Yahweh, and you can hear a pin drop, dead silence. No temples in Egypt for this god, unlike all other foreign gods. No equating this god with any of the native gods, as was commonplace with non-Egyptian gods in Egypt. No discussion about this god in the Egyptian religious texts. Nothing but an empty claim made by Amenhotep III that he was the ruler of the land of Canaan, that the people of Yahweh were now taking over. And there was nothing he could do about it. His son and royal successor, Amenhotep IV, or Enkidu as he later changed his name, was so afraid of this god that when the Canaanites begged him repeatedly to send troops to fight the Hebrews who were gobbling up all the land of Canaan, he ignored their cries and left them to their fate. Sorry, can't help you. I wish you the best of luck, but you're on your own. Because the last pharaoh who tried to put his hands on the people of Yahweh, he's still at the bottom of the Red Sea. I'm not going to the bottom of the Red Sea. This is the truth about our history and our heritage. These so-called European scholars don't want you to know. These are the facts they discuss in private among themselves. to see how they can deconstruct it and then teach you lies to prevent you from learning the truth. I did not make up the name Yahweh. You can read the Greek historian Diodorus of Sicily, one of the greatest historians of his time. He was told by Hebrews in the 1st century BCE that the proper name of the God of the Hebrews is pronounced Yahweh, exactly in agreement with the Egyptian record and with the much later Assyrian record. But modern scholars teach you lies so you can run and chase after some make-believe cat named Yahweh or Jehovah or Yahoo or Yahweh. The Creator's name is Yahweh. It always has been and it always will be. Now let's turn to the book of Zechariah, mispronounced as Zechariah, chapter 14 and verse 9. Wa'e Yahweh lamalach gal chal ha'aretz, bayom ha'ho ya'e Yahweh echad, wa shamo echad. And it shall happen that Yahweh will be king over all the earth. In that day there will be one Yahweh, and his name one. Now the English version puts the word Lord in the place of God's proper name, so you have to go to the Hebrew text to see what is really being said. But ever read this verse and ask yourself, why does the prophet say that God's proper name will one day be one? Isn't it one today? The answer is no. You can count more than 20 different ways that people have come up with how to say his proper name. And the prophet knew that was going to happen. Now let's go over to the book of Zaphaniah, mispronounced as Zephaniah, chapter 3 and verse 9. Che'azapach al gamem shapa barora, l'char chalam basham yao lagabado shacham achad. For then I will return to the people the pure language, that all may call on the name Yahweh to serve him with one accord. Shapa Borora, Shapa Borora, the pure language. There is only one pure language, and that is the holy language you've been hearing me speak throughout this video. It is not a living language today, because one of the curses God put on his people for breaking his laws was that they would lose their language and speak the languages of the Gentiles. He took his holy language and his holy name out of our mouths as punishment. But as we approach the day when he will rule over this earth, he promised to restore the knowledge of his name and his pure language back to his people, who were dispersed beyond the rivers of Ethiopia and then shipped off to the Americas as slaves during the transatlantic slave trade. This is the trigger that will usher in the new age and the return of the Mashiach, Yahushai ban Yahusap. The restoration of the name of the Most High begins in the far east, according to Revelation chapter 7. The seal of God written on the foreheads of 144,000 select children of Yahusharal is not a tattoo. It is God's proper name in their minds and hearts. It is the boldness to proclaim God's proper name correctly, to shout it and to sing it until it drowns out every other sound and is the only sound heard all over the face of the earth. That day has already begun. This video series was put together in the Far East and is intended primarily but not exclusively for the tribes of Yahusharal that were sent to Egypt in slave ships according to the prophecy of Masha. To the tribe of Rauban, to the tribe of Shamayon, to the tribe of Loe, to the tribe of Yaudah, to the tribe of Dan, to the tribe of Naphtali, to the tribe of Gad, to the tribe of Asher, to the tribe of Yashshachar, to the tribe of Zabalon, to the tribe of Aparim, to the tribe of Manasseh, to the tribe of Banyamin, Baruch Ya'u Alei Yahusharal, Magolam wa Garagolam, Aman wa Aman.